I'm Sergio Williams, 68 years old and still strong enough to build a house with these hands. Never thought I'd be locked out of my own home by family. When my daughter-in-law, Amanda, changed the locks and smugly said, "It's ours now," she expected tears. Instead, I smiled, pulled out my phone, and started the process that would save my home and show her true colors to my son. If you're watching this, let me know where you're from, and hit that subscribe button before I tell you how I turned the tables. My story begins in rural Pennsylvania, where I grew up as the son of Italian immigrants who arrived in America with nothing but dreams and calloused hands. My father worked in coal mines while my mother took in laundry, both determined to give me opportunities they never had. From them, I learned the value of hard work and saving for what matters. By 16, I was working construction jobs after school and weekends. The foreman liked my attention to detail and work ethic, so he taught me everything from framing to finishing work. Every paycheck went straight to my savings account. While other kids bought cars or spent money on dates, I had bigger plans. For 20 years, I saved nearly every penny, dreaming of the day I'd build my own home. At 25, I met Maria at a community festival. She was serving homemade cannoli at her family's booth, and one taste of her cooking had me returning for seconds and thirds until she laughed and said, "You could just ask for my number instead of eating all our profits." Maria shared my dreams of creating a special place to call our own. She'd sketch house designs on napkins during our dates, and I'd explain how I could build each element with my own hands. After 4 years of marriage, we finally found the perfect piece of land just outside town. 3 acres with mature oak trees, a gentle slope for good drainage, and a view of rolling hills that took Maria's breath away. The bank approved our loan based on my perfect credit and substantial down payment. For the next 3 years, I worked my regular construction job during the day and built our home evenings and weekends. Maria would bring dinner out to the site, and we'd eat together watching the sun set over what would become our forever home. I poured everything I knew into that house. The foundation was twice as thick as code required. The framing was precise to 1/8 of an inch, but it was the special touches for Maria that made it truly ours. I designed a kitchen layout specifically for her height, with custom countertops 2 inches lower than standard, so she wouldn't strain her back while cooking. The garden terrace faced east because Maria loved morning sunlight with her coffee, and the crowning achievement was a hand-carved staircase banister that took me 6 months of evenings to complete, each spindle featuring a rose in honor of Maria's favorite flower. When we finally moved in, Maria was 7 months pregnant with our son. We'd converted the smallest bedroom into a nursery, painting clouds on the ceiling and forest animals on the walls. Thomas was born that winter, arriving 2 weeks early, as if eager to take his place in our home. Those first years with him were the happiest of my life. Our house filled with laughter as he took his first steps across the living room hardwood floors I'd installed board by board. But happiness doesn't last forever. When Thomas turned 15, Maria found a lump that changed everything. The doctors said the cancer was aggressive, giving her maybe a year. She fought for 2, wanting to see Thomas graduate high school. She almost made it, passing 3 months before his ceremony. I sat alone at that graduation, holding an empty seat for her. After Maria died, the house became even more precious to me. Every corner held memories of her. The kitchen still seemed to smell of her Sunday sauce. The garden bloomed with perennials she'd planted. Even as grief threatened to drown me, the home we built together kept me afloat. A physical reminder of our love. Raising Thomas alone during his teenage years nearly broke me. He acted out, angry at the world for taking his mother. There were nights I'd find him missing, only to get calls from police about parties or minor vandalism. I never gave up on him, though. I worked overtime to afford a counselor, attended every parent-teacher conference, and somehow managed to keep him on track to graduate. College seemed to help Thomas find direction. He chose business marketing, though his grades showed he wasn't applying himself fully. I never pushed him to follow construction like me, wanting him to find his own path. But I did insist he finish what he started, even when he called sophomore year talking about dropping out. I'm proud that he listened, graduating 4 years later and finding a job at a marketing firm in the city. Thomas moved into a small apartment downtown, and I settled into a quiet routine in our family home. I kept busy with home improvement projects, joined a weekly poker game with neighborhood friends, and eventually returned to work part-time as a construction consultant. Life was stable, if a little lonely, until Thomas called excitedly about a woman he'd met. Her name was Amanda, and Thomas couldn't stop talking about her. They'd only been dating 2 months when he brought her to Sunday dinner. Amanda arrived in designer clothes and driving a car that cost more than Thomas made in a year. She worked in marketing too, at a rival firm to Thomas's company. Throughout dinner, she complimented my home effusively, asking detailed questions about its value, the neighborhood property trends, and whether I'd considered various upgrades. Something about her interest felt excessive, but I dismissed my concerns, happy to see Thomas so enamored. 6 months later, Thomas announced they were engaged. The proposals seemed rushed, and Thomas appeared nervous rather than joyful when sharing the news. When I asked if they might wait a bit longer to be sure, he became defensive, saying I just didn't understand their connection. Wanting to support him, I offered to help with wedding costs, though retirement was approaching and my savings weren't what they once were. Amanda's wedding demands escalated rapidly. The initial budget doubled, then tripled as she insisted on exotic flowers, premium venues, and extravagant catering. Each time I expressed concern about costs, Thomas would look trapped between us, eventually siding with Amanda and saying, "We only plan to do this once, Dad." My oldest friend Jack pulled me aside at the engagement party. "Sergio, that woman is more interested in what you and Thomas have than who you are," he warned. "I've seen her type before in my law practice. Just be careful." I appreciated his concern but chalked it up to overprotectiveness. The wedding was far more lavish than anything Maria and I would have approved, but I paid the bills without complaint, wanting Thomas to have his special day. What troubled me was that Amanda's family, who I later learned were quite wealthy, contributed almost nothing despite their means. At the reception, her father made jokes about how Thomas and Amanda should thank Sergio for the free party that made several guests uncomfortable. During my wedding speech, I spoke from the heart about family being the greatest treasure in life. I promised to always support Thomas and Amanda and welcomed her to our family with open arms. When I presented them with a significant check as a wedding gift, Amanda's eyes lit up in a way they hadn't when I spoke of family values. The first time Amanda visited the house as Thomas's wife, I noticed her gaze lingering on every detail of our home. She walked through rooms measuring with her eyes, asking about square footage and recent appraisals. Most concerning were her pointed questions about my will and whether Thomas was the sole beneficiary. I answered vaguely, unsettled by her focus on material matters so soon after the wedding. 6 months after the wedding, trouble struck. Thomas lost his job during company downsizing, the youngest employee in his department and first to go. While he scrambled to find new work, Amanda suggested they move in with me temporarily to save money. Though I valued my privacy, family comes first. I converted my workshop in the finished basement into a comfortable bedroom for them, moving my tools to the garage. The first few weeks showed promise. We shared family dinners, with Amanda proving to be a decent cook, though not as passionate about it as Maria had been. Thomas helped with yard work while searching for jobs online. Amanda took on cleaning duties for the main living areas. We established a reasonable schedule for shared bathroom use and kitchen time. I even found myself enjoying the company after years of living alone. Gradually, small changes began happening without my input. I'd return from a grocery run to find furniture rearranged. Amanda started referring to the living room as the common area and my bedroom as the west bedroom, as though the house were a shared apartment rather than my home. When I'd use the kitchen after her cleaning, she'd point out spots I'd missed wiping down, though I'd been keeping house successfully for decades. "This kitchen is so outdated," she remarked one evening while cooking. "The layout is really inefficient. We should consider renovating while we're here." The suggestion took me aback. The kitchen was designed specifically for Maria, every inch meaningful to me. "It works fine for me," I replied. "I don't see any need for changes." She smiled tightly. "Just thinking of resale value, Sergio. Properties with updated kitchens sell for significantly more." I hadn't mentioned selling, nor had any intention to. The comment lingered uneasily in my mind. Thomas found a new marketing position, but at considerably lower pay than his previous job. He worked long hours trying to prove himself, rarely making it home for dinner. This left Amanda and me alone in the house more often than I was comfortable with. She began inviting friends over without telling me. Ladies from her social circle who would tour the house openly discussing what they would change immediately, as if I weren't present. One rainy Saturday, I went to the garage looking for an old photo album. Instead, I discovered Maria's handmade quilts, stuffed in plastic bins. These quilts had been proudly displayed in our guest bedroom for years, each stitch a labor of love from my late wife. When I confronted Amanda, she appeared surprised by my reaction. "Those old blankets were collecting dust and making Thomas's allergies worse," she explained. "I just stored them properly for preservation. Isn't that better than leaving them out to deteriorate?" When I tried discussing respect for my belongings with both of them that evening, Thomas immediately defended Amanda. "She's just trying to help organize, Dad. The house has gotten cluttered over the years." More troubling was Amanda's new habit of suggesting I was becoming confused whenever I confronted her about changes. When I mentioned items moved or conversations we'd had, she'd exchange worried glances with Thomas and gently suggest my memory might be slipping. During a neighborhood barbecue I hosted, I overheard Amanda telling our neighbors they would be renovating soon and asking for contractor recommendations. When neighbor Sam asked if I was finally updating the place, Amanda laughed and said, "Sergio's letting us take the reins on home decisions now. It's too much for him to manage alone." Walking back to the house for more ice, I passed Thomas and Amanda in a heated whisper by the garden. "Your father can't maintain this place much longer," Amanda insisted. "We need to discuss next steps before something major breaks that we can't afford to fix." Thomas looked uncomfortable but didn't contradict her. My longtime neighbor Barbara pulled me aside the following week. "Sergio, I saw Amanda showing someone around your property yesterday while you were at your doctor's appointment. The man was taking photos and looked like a realtor. Is everything okay?" The news chilled me. I hadn't authorized anyone to evaluate my property. Amanda's control extended to household finances when she offered to help manage bills after spotting an overdue notice for the water service. I'd simply misplaced the bill during their move-in, but she used the incident to suggest I might need assistance with financial matters. Soon, she was collecting mail and organizing paperwork in what had been Maria's small desk. One afternoon, I came home early from a dentist appointment to find Amanda in my home office, my personal mail opened and spread across the desk, including bank statements and property tax assessments. She didn't even appear embarrassed, claiming she was just helping organize and had opened the mail by accident. Thomas became increasingly withdrawn, picking up weekend shifts and avoiding one-on-one conversations. When we did speak, he seemed distracted and anxious, checking his phone constantly, as if expecting important messages. Our father-son bond that had weathered so much was fraying under Amanda's influence. "This house is too big for just one person," Amanda stated during dinner one night. "All these unused rooms must be such a burden for you to clean and heat, Sergio." The comment wasn't subtle, neither was her follow-up. "Have you ever considered downsizing to something more manageable for a man your age?" When I made it clear I had no intention of leaving the home I built with my own hands, Amanda arranged a family dinner that turned painfully tense. She presented research on home prices in the area and maintenance costs for aging properties. When I refused to discuss changing the house deed to include Thomas and her, the atmosphere turned glacial. Amanda's interest in my health intensified in unsettling ways. She began suggesting senior living communities with excellent medical staff on premises and leaving brochures on my nightstand. She questioned me about medical appointments and insisted on discussing my care plan with Thomas present. At 68, I had normal age-related issues but remained active and independent, making her focus on my supposedly declining health feel calculated rather than caring. Thomas maintained painful silence during these conversations. When Amanda would say, "We're just concerned about your future well-being," he would stare at his plate, unable to meet my eyes. I recognized the trapped expression from my own mirror during difficult years of my marriage when finances were tight and I felt overwhelmed. My son was drowning but wouldn't reach for the lifeline I tried to extend. Multiple attempts at having a heart-to-heart with Thomas were interrupted by Amanda suddenly needing his help or remembering urgent errands they had to run. The few times I managed to speak with him alone, he seemed guarded, answering questions vaguely and changing subjects quickly. Friends who had regularly visited for years began making excuses after experiencing Amanda's cold hospitality. Jack, who had been coming for weekly card games since before Thomas was born, called to say he wouldn't be over anymore after Amanda had made pointed comments about old men wasting time and the smell of cigars ruining the upholstery. The final straw came when I returned from grocery shopping to find Maria's beloved rose garden completely dug up. The heritage roses I had maintained for 20 years were gone, replaced by stark modern landscaping rocks and a few sculptural plants. Amanda was directing a landscaping crew, pointing where to place decorative boulders. "What have you done?" My voice barely worked through the shock. "Surprise!" Amanda's smile never reached her eyes. "We've updated the front yard with modern, low-maintenance landscaping. No more thorny roses for you to hurt yourself on, and it's drought-resistant. Thomas and I made the decision to help you out." Thomas wasn't even there to face me, conveniently working late again. As I stood amid the destruction of Maria's garden, the painful realization solidified. I was being systematically pushed out of my own home by the woman my son had married, and he was too weak or too blind to stop it. My old fishing buddy Frank called with an invitation that would prove fateful. "Sergio, the guys are heading up to my lake cabin for 3 days. Fishing's been amazing this season. You need to join us." Under normal circumstances, I would have jumped at the chance for some peace and fishing. With the situation at home, I was hesitant to leave. Surprisingly, Amanda encouraged the trip. "You should absolutely go, Sergio. You deserve a break, and Thomas and I can take care of everything here. Don't worry about a thing." Her enthusiasm made me uneasy rather than reassured. Throughout the fishing trip, I couldn't shake a sense of foreboding. The guys noticed my distraction when I missed obvious bites and checked my phone constantly. After the second night, I made an excuse about a doctor's appointment and headed home, cutting the trip short by a day. Approaching my house, everything looked normal from the outside, but inside told a different story. Several family photos had been removed from the walls in the living room and hallway, replaced with abstract artwork I'd never seen before. The display cabinet that had held Maria's collection of hand-painted teacups was now filled with Amanda's modern glass sculptures. Most disturbing was the discovery that the antique dining set that had been in Maria's family for generations was no longer in the dining room. I found it disassembled in the garage, the chairs stacked unceremoniously, and the tabletop leaning against the wall behind boxes of holiday decorations. When confronted, Thomas shrugged uncomfortably. "Amanda is just updating things a bit, Dad. That dining set is pretty scratched up and doesn't match the aesthetic she's going for. We were thinking of a glass and chrome set that would brighten the space. That dining set was your grandmother's. Your mother and I restored it together before you were born." My voice was steady despite my racing heart. "It's still here, Dad. We didn't get rid of it." Thomas wouldn't meet my eyes. "It's just, Amanda thinks the house needs a more contemporary look if we ever decide to." He trailed off, but his meaning was clear enough. Later that week, I found glossy brochures for local retirement communities placed conspicuously on my desk. They were open to pages highlighting cozy one-bedroom units and 24-hour care options. Next to them was a notepad with Amanda's handwriting listing nearby communities and their costs, with notes about distance from our house and visiting convenience. That evening, I overheard Amanda on the phone in the kitchen, thinking I was watching television in the living room. "Once we own the place, the first thing to go will be that ridiculous wood paneling in the den." No, he hasn't agreed to anything officially, but Thomas is working on him. The property values in this neighborhood have doubled in 5 years. It would be stupid not to sell. "Yes, we're getting an appraisal next week." Sleep became difficult as anxiety grew. I found myself waking at the slightest sound, wondering what else might disappear or change without my permission. My home no longer felt like the safe haven it had been for decades. Instead, I felt like a guest whose welcome was wearing thin. My suspicions were confirmed when I found mail from a home appraisal company, scheduling an evaluation Amanda had arranged without telling me. The letter referenced the sellers and mentioned preparing the home for market, though I had never agreed to any sale. Going through my desk one afternoon, I realized several important documents were missing: the original deed to the house, insurance policies, and some investment statements. My usually meticulous filing system had been disrupted, with folders reorganized and some missing entirely. With a growing sense of violation, I purchased a small security camera online and installed it discreetly on my bedroom bookshelf. The decision to monitor activity in my own home felt extreme, but I needed evidence of what was happening when I wasn't present. The footage confirmed my worst fears. While I was at a doctor's appointment, Amanda spent over an hour searching through my filing cabinet, taking photos of documents with her phone, and removing papers from folders. She tried several keys in my locked bottom drawer before giving up, then made a phone call where she complained about old people and their paranoid security measures. That evening, I confronted her directly. "Amanda, I need to understand why you're going through my private papers without permission." She barely flinched, immediately shifting to offense. "I was looking for the property survey you promised to show us. Don't you remember? At the wedding reception, you said this house would be Thomas's someday, and you wanted us to understand the property boundaries for when we eventually add the pool." "I never said any such thing at the wedding," I replied firmly. "Oh, Sergio." Her tone was patronizing. "Your memory isn't what it used to be. Thomas remembers the conversation too. Don't you, honey?" She turned to my son, who had just walked in. Thomas looked trapped, his eyes darting between us before mumbling something about sort of remembering and quickly excusing himself to take a work call. He avoided home entirely for 3 days after that argument, leaving me alone with Amanda's increasingly bold behavior. Recognizing I needed legal advice, I called my old friend Jack, who had retired from his law practice but still maintained connections in the legal community. Over coffee at a diner well away from my neighborhood, I explained the situation. "This is textbook elder abuse and manipulation, Sergio," Jack said grimly after hearing my account. "They're trying to gaslight you into believing you're losing competence, so they can justify taking control of your assets." Jack explained about elder abuse laws and the importance of documentation. "Start recording everything. Keep a detailed journal with dates, times, and exactly what was said or done. Back up security footage to the cloud where they can't access it. And whatever you do, don't sign anything Amanda gives you." Following his advice, I began secretly recording conversations on my phone, whenever legal in our state, and maintaining a detailed journal of events. I documented missing items, unauthorized changes to the house, and every comment suggesting I was becoming confused or forgetful. The situation worsened when I learned from my cousin in Florida that Amanda had been calling extended family members, expressing concerns about my mental state. "She told me you've been getting lost in your own neighborhood and forgetting to pay bills," my cousin reported worriedly. "Is any of that true, Sergio?" While searching for my missing gold watch that had been a retirement gift from my construction company, I found something chilling in Amanda's purse: draft documents for power of attorney that would give Thomas control over my financial and medical decisions. The papers were filled out but not yet signed or notarized. The stress began affecting my health. My normally stable blood pressure rose to concerning levels, and I developed insomnia that left me exhausted during the day. Amanda seized on these health changes, suggesting to Thomas within my hearing that perhaps he should drive me to doctor appointments for safety reasons, since my condition was deteriorating. Taking proactive steps to protect myself, I opened a separate bank account at a new bank and moved a significant portion of my savings there. I made copies of all important documents and stored them with Jack for safekeeping. I updated my will with a new attorney recommended by Jack, explicitly stating my wishes regarding the house and including video testimony of my mental competence. While looking for a missing cufflink in the guest bathroom Amanda used, I found a business card for a locksmith tucked in her cosmetics bag. The discovery sent a chill through me, but I replaced everything exactly as I'd found it, now alert to the possibility that they might take more drastic measures. My heart broke watching Thomas become a participant in Amanda's schemes, whether through active involvement or passive acceptance. The son I'd raised, who once had a strong moral compass, was allowing his wife to manipulate and push out his own father. Despite the pain, a growing determination took root. I would not be driven from the home I built with my own hands, the home where Maria and I had raised our son with love. The day everything came to a head started innocuously enough. I had an important doctor appointment to discuss concerns about my heart. My blood pressure had been consistently elevated, and the doctor wanted to run additional tests to rule out serious conditions. Amanda made a surprisingly strong case for driving me to the appointment. The stress might affect your test results, Sergio. Let me handle the driving so you can relax. When I politely declined, saying I'd been driving myself to appointments for decades, she became insistent to a suspicious degree. At least let Thomas pick you up afterward, she pressed. The doctor might give you medication that makes driving unsafe. Eventually, I agreed that Thomas could pick me up after the appointment, mainly to end the uncomfortable conversation. Thomas called that morning to confirm he'd be there at 11:30, right when my appointment was scheduled to end. Midway through my consultation, my phone vibrated with an incoming call from my neighbor Barbara. I excused myself briefly to answer, concerned something might be wrong. Sergio, there are people at your house right now, Barbara said without preamble. A van just pulled up with some logo on it, and Amanda let them in. I thought you should know since you mentioned being concerned about changes happening without your permission. My blood pressure reading, which the nurse had just taken, suddenly made more sense. What kind of van, Barbara? Could you see the logo? Something with keys or locks, I think. It was parked at an angle. Do you want me to go over there? No. Just keep an eye out if you can. I'm heading home now. I thanked her and returned to the examination room, where my doctor expressed concern about the significant spike in my blood pressure readings. Whatever's causing you stress, Mr. Williams, it's having a real impact on your health, he cautioned. I'm prescribing medication to help manage your blood pressure, but addressing the underlying stressors is equally important. I rushed through the remainder of the appointment, promising to schedule the additional tests soon. Outside the medical building, I called Thomas repeatedly as I hailed a taxi, but each call went straight to voicemail. My messages grew increasingly urgent. Thomas, call me immediately. Something's happening at the house. The 20-minute taxi ride felt like hours. As we turned onto my street, I spotted an unfamiliar white van in my driveway, Secure Solutions Locksmith printed on its side. My hands began to shake as the reality of what was happening dawned on me. A man in a blue uniform was just leaving as my taxi pulled up. He avoided eye contact, hurrying to his van with his toolbox as I approached. The taxi driver, sensing something was wrong, asked if I needed him to stay. No, thank you. This is a family matter. I paid him and turned toward my house of 30 years, the home I had built with my own hands for Maria and our son. My key no longer fit in the front door lock. I tried again, jiggling it gently, then with more force, but the metal wouldn't even enter the keyhole. The lock had been changed, on my own house, without my knowledge or consent. A mixture of panic and fury rose in my chest as I banged on the door. Open this door right now, I called out, my voice steadier than I felt. Amanda, Thomas, open this door immediately. After what seemed an eternity, the door swung open. Amanda stood in the entryway, blocking my entrance. Her expression wasn't apologetic or embarrassed. Instead, she wore a triumphant smile that chilled me more than the locked door had. It's ours now. You should find somewhere else to live, she said with calm deliberation, each word clear and practiced. We've made other arrangements for you. Over her shoulder, I could see Thomas in the background, his face pale and eyes downcast, unable to look directly at me. The son I had raised, standing silently while his wife locked his father out of his own home. Amanda had clearly prepared for this moment. She launched into a rehearsed speech about my supposed inability to maintain the home. The property is simply too much for someone in your condition, Sergio. The stairs are becoming dangerous for you, and the maintenance is beyond your capabilities now. Thomas's name is on the deed anyway, she lied smoothly. We've consulted with the family attorney, and legally, this house belongs to both of you. As his wife, that extends certain rights to me as well. She mentioned having spoken with elder care specialists about options that would better suit my needs and suggested I should be grateful for their concern about my welfare. Throughout her monologue, I experienced something unexpected. The initial shock gave way not to the tears or begging she clearly anticipated, but to a strange, clear calm. Decades of construction work had taught me that when a structure fails catastrophically, panic helps no one. Clear thinking and decisive action are what save the day. Amanda faltered slightly when I didn't respond with distress. Her practiced speech slowed as she noticed my expression changing from shock to something she couldn't quite read. The hint of uncertainty in her eyes gave me a grim satisfaction. With steady hands that betrayed none of my inner turmoil, I pulled out my phone and took a clear photo of her blocking the doorway to my home. "You have no idea what you've just done," I said quietly. Amanda's composure slipped for just a moment before her smug confidence returned. "Taking pictures won't help you, old man. You can call the police if you want, but they'll side with us when they see your condition. Thomas has already spoken to them about your increasing confusion." I looked past her to my son, standing in the hallway of the home where I had taught him to walk, to read, to be a man of integrity. "Is this what you want, son?" I asked directly. Thomas opened his mouth, but no words came out. His gaze dropped to the floor, shoulders hunched with what I hoped was shame. I nodded slowly, accepting what I saw. "I understand completely now." With dignity that surprised even me, I turned and walked back down the path I had laid stone by stone 20 years earlier. Behind me, Amanda called out something threatening about trespassing if I returned, but I didn't turn around. The photograph on my phone was the first piece of evidence in what would become my carefully executed response to their betrayal. Sitting in my car around the corner from my house, I finally allowed myself a brief moment of tears. The pain of betrayal, especially from my own son, cut deeper than any physical wound I'd sustained in decades of construction work. But years of problem-solving on job sites had taught me that emotion needs to be acknowledged and then channeled into action. After those few minutes of grief, I wiped my eyes and started the engine, steel resolve replacing despair. I drove directly to Jack's home across town. When he answered the door and saw my expression, he immediately ushered me inside. "What happened?" he asked, recognizing the look of a man who'd been dealt a serious blow. "They changed the locks on my house." My voice was steady now. "Amanda told me it's theirs now, and I should find somewhere else to live." Thomas stood by and said nothing. Jack's outrage mirrored what mine had been initially. "Those conniving little..." "You're staying here, Sergio. The guest room is yours for as long as you need it." His immediate offer of shelter was the first kindness in what had been a devastating day. After settling in, I revealed the preparations I'd already made following Jack's earlier advice. Journals documenting Amanda's behavior, recordings of conversations, photos of documents, and the security camera footage showing her searching my private papers. "You've done everything right so far," Jack affirmed. "Now we need to bring in professional help." He called his daughter Elaine, who had followed him into law but specialized in elder law cases. "She's dealt with situations like this before and won't back down from a fight." Elaine arrived for dinner, bringing case files and legal references. Over a meal I barely tasted, she outlined my legal options in clear terms that helped calm my racing thoughts. "First, let's address the immediate concern. The house is solely in your name, correct?" When I confirmed this, she nodded confidently. "Then they have no legal claim whatsoever. Amanda's statement that Thomas is on the deed is a blatant lie. Even if he were, changing locks without your knowledge would still be illegal." Elaine explained we had grounds for multiple legal actions: breaking and entering, elder abuse, attempted fraud, and potentially criminal charges depending on what else we discovered. "The good news," she continued, "is that your documentation gives us a strong starting position. Many victims in your situation have no proof of the manipulation." When discussing potential consequences, my feelings about Thomas complicated matters. "He's still my son," I said quietly. "I want him to face consequences for his actions, but I'm not sure I want him to face criminal charges." "That's understandable," Elaine replied. "But right now, we need to understand the full picture before making those decisions. I recommend a complete investigation into Amanda's background. People who attempt this kind of manipulation usually have a history." She connected me with a private investigator who specialized in cases involving financial exploitation. Within days, He uncovered disturbing patterns in Amanda's past. A previous relationship with a wealthy man, 30 years her senior, that ended abruptly, rumors of financial impropriety at her former workplace, and most significantly, a prior marriage she had hidden from both Thomas and me. She was married for 11 months to a real estate developer in Arizona, the investigator reported. The divorce records are sealed, but I found newspaper articles suggesting financial disputes were central to the case. Further digging revealed Amanda had faced fraud charges 3 years before meeting Thomas. The case had been settled out of court with a non-disclosure agreement, but court records indicated she had misrepresented herself to investors in a small business venture. The most concerning discovery was Amanda's significant personal debt, which Thomas appeared to know nothing about. Credit reports showed maxed-out credit cards, a car loan underwater, and collection notices for luxury purchases. Her financial motivation for targeting my home became crystal clear. Evidence mounted that Amanda had planned the lockout methodically. The locksmith company confirmed, receiving a call 2 weeks prior to schedule the service, contradicting any claim that the decision had been made impulsively. Neighbors provided statements about seeing Amanda meeting with realtors before the lockout, clearly planning to sell the property quickly. Barbara, my most vigilant neighbor, had photographed Amanda showing a man around the exterior of my house while I was at a dental appointment. He was measuring the yard and taking notes, Barbara recalled. When I asked what they were doing, Amanda said they were planning improvements but changed the subject when I asked for details. With Elaine's legal team, we developed a comprehensive strategy. We need to approach this from multiple angles, Elaine explained during a strategy session at her office. Property rights are the most straightforward claim, but the elder abuse and fraud aspects strengthen our position significantly. The most painful decision was how to handle Thomas. I believe Amanda is the primary architect of this scheme, I told the legal team. Before he met her, Thomas never showed this kind of behavior. I want to give him one chance to separate himself from what she's done. We prepared a comprehensive legal filing, covering all aspects of the case: my clear property rights, documented evidence of elder abuse tactics, fraud in Amanda's statements about the deed, and the locksmith service constituting breaking and entering. The filing was ready, but not yet submitted, giving Thomas a narrow window to choose his path. We need to establish a secure communication channel for Thomas that Amanda can't access or monitor, the investigator advised. Based on what we've seen, she likely checks his phone and email. We arranged for a formal documentation of all valuable items in the house, using photos I had fortunately taken for insurance purposes years earlier. This would prove critical if Amanda began selling or disposing of belongings out of spite. Elaine recommended additional security measures for me, including a temporary restraining order to prevent Amanda from approaching me once legal proceedings began. Based on her pattern of behavior, she may try to intimidate you or create situations that make you appear unstable. We prepared a media statement in case Amanda tried to control the narrative by going public with false claims about my mental capacity. Local elder advocacy groups, hearing about the case, offered support and resources, connecting me with others who had faced similar situations. The hardest task was writing a letter to Thomas. I spent hours drafting and redrafting, trying to balance my heartbreak with the door I wanted to leave open for reconciliation. The final version was direct, but not vindictive. Thomas, what has happened is not just wrong, it's illegal. The house is solely in my name, and there was never any promise to transfer it to you and Amanda. I have extensive documentation of the manipulation tactics used against me, including security footage, witness statements, and financial records. Legal action begins tomorrow, unless you contact me through the attorney listed below. This is your one opportunity to separate yourself from Amanda's actions and avoid being named as a co-defendant in multiple civil and potentially criminal complaints. I still love you, son, but I will not allow myself to be victimized, even by family. Dad, with all preparations in place, I finally felt ready to reclaim what was rightfully mine and expose Amanda's true nature to my son and anyone else she had deceived. The first move in our carefully orchestrated plan was delivering a formal legal letter to the house by a professional process server. The document outlined my ownership rights and demanded immediate return of the premises with a 24-hour deadline before further legal action. I requested video of the delivery, which captured Amanda's shocked expression as she realized this would not be the easy victory she had anticipated. She tried to refuse service, the process server reported. When I explained that would only make her position worse, she took the documents but said, and I quote, "His confused ramblings won't hold up in court." With Amanda's refusal to vacate, we proceeded with an emergency court filing, submitting our comprehensive evidence package to a judge known for taking property rights violations seriously. The filing included deed documentation, tax records showing I was the sole owner, and evidence of the lockout, including the locksmith receipt Elaine's investigator had obtained. The judge acted swiftly, ordering the sheriff to deliver a formal eviction notice. Since I was the legal property owner, and they had no lease or ownership claim, Amanda and Thomas were classified as unwelcome occupants rather than tenants, expediting the process significantly. Amanda's panicked response was immediate, my phone filled with voicemails and texts ranging from tearful pleas to veiled threats. Following Elaine's advice, I left them all unanswered, documenting each contact as evidence of harassment. Thomas finally called from his work phone, sounding desperate and confused. "Dad, what's happening? Amanda says you're trying to have us arrested. Can we please talk about this?" We arranged to meet at a coffee shop, halfway between Jack's home and Thomas's workplace. I arrived early, securing a table in the corner away from other customers, and waited anxiously to see if my son would actually show up. Thomas arrived looking haggard, with dark circles under his eyes and his clothes wrinkled as if he'd slept in them. The confident marketing professional had been replaced by someone who appeared lost and overwhelmed. "Before you say anything," I began once he sat down, "I need you to see these." I slid a folder across the table containing evidence of Amanda's previous schemes, documentation of her hidden marriage, and financial records showing her substantial debt. Thomas stared at the pages in disbelief, his hands shaking slightly as he turned from one damning document to the next. "This can't be right," he whispered, but his tone lacked conviction. "She would have told me about being married before." "There's more," I said gently, showing him evidence that Amanda had been undermining him at his workplace, contacting his supervisor with concerns about his performance that coincided with his periods of resisting her influence over me. His shock turned to anger as the pieces fell into place. "She told me you promised us the house," he said, his voice breaking. "She said you agreed at the wedding that we would take over the property and you would move to a retirement community once we had our first child." I pulled out my phone and played a clip from our wedding video, showing the exact moment I had given my speech about family. There was no mention of the house, no promise of property transfer, just my heartfelt welcome of Amanda to our family and pledge of emotional support. Thomas broke down completely then, admitting through tears that Amanda had been controlling their finances, isolating him from friends who asked too many questions, and gradually convincing him that I was becoming mentally incapable of managing my affairs. "She kept saying it was for your own good," he explained, looking utterly defeated, "that you were too proud to admit you needed help." Then she started talking about selling the house, claiming you had agreed to it earlier but were now forgetting conversations. Our emergency court hearing was scheduled for the following morning with Judge Eleanor Ramirez, known for her strict interpretation of property law and intolerance for exploitation. Amanda had hired an attorney who specialized in family law, but appeared to misunderstand basic property rights, making weak arguments about verbal promises and sweat equity that the judge dismissed almost immediately. Our team presented the overwhelming evidence methodically. Clear deed documentation showing I was the sole owner, tax records confirming my consistent payment of property taxes, and detailed timeline of the lockout incident, with supporting photographic evidence. When Amanda's attorney attempted to question my mental capacity, suggesting I had agreed to transfer the property but later forgotten, Elaine countered with recent medical records from my doctor confirming my cognitive functions were excellent for my age. She also presented the security footage showing Amanda searching my private papers and making phone calls about selling once we owned the place. Judge Ramirez's reprimand of Amanda's actions was scathing. "What I see before me is a transparent attempt to steal property through manipulation and elder abuse tactics," she stated firmly. "The documentation is unambiguous regarding ownership, and the methods employed against Mr. Williams are particularly disturbing. The court issued an immediate order for return of the property to me, with instructions that all of Amanda and Thomas's possessions be removed under supervision. The judge also granted a temporary restraining order, preventing Amanda from coming within 500 feet of me or the property except during the supervised removal of her belongings. Amanda's true nature revealed itself fully in the courtroom when the ruling was announced. She turned to Thomas, her face contorted with fury, and hissed loud enough for nearby parties to hear, "This is your fault. If you had just gotten him to sign those papers when I told you to, we'd own that house by now." Thomas visibly recoiled from her, the last illusions about their relationship shattering as he witnessed her prioritize the property over any concern for him or their marriage. A police escort was arranged for my return to the home, ensuring there would be no confrontation or further attempts to prevent my entry. Walking back through my front door with new keys in hand brought both relief and sadness. The house had been significantly altered in the short time I'd been gone. Maria's photographs had been removed from walls, furniture rearranged, and several sentimental items appeared to be missing entirely. Most heartbreaking was the discovery that the hand-carved jewelry box I had made for Maria on our 5th anniversary had been broken, the intricate lid splintered as if stomped on out of spite. Thomas called me that evening from a hotel, his voice hollow with the devastation of seeing Amanda's true colors. "I don't know how to apologize for what I've done," he said. "I let her manipulate me into betraying my own father. I don't expect forgiveness, but I need you to know I'm filing for divorce tomorrow." 2 days after reclaiming my home, the security system I had installed captured Amanda attempting to enter using a hidden spare key I hadn't known existed. The alarm sounded immediately, and police responded within minutes, finding her trying to force a window at the back of the house. The violation of the restraining order resulted in her arrest and strengthened our case for the permanent order we were seeking. The final confrontation came during the supervised removal of Amanda's possessions. She arrived with a rental truck and 2 friends, maintaining a veneer of composure until the sheriff's deputy stepped away briefly to take a call. Seeing an opportunity with just me and the legal assistant present, she approached with naked hostility. "This isn't over," she spat, keeping her voice low. "You think you've won, but I'll make sure Thomas pays for choosing you over me. Everything we had is gone because of your interference." I looked at the woman who had tried to steal my home, destroy my relationship with my son, and erase the memories of Maria I had preserved so carefully. In that moment, I felt an unexpected sense of peace rather than anger. "I forgive you, Amanda," I said quietly, surprising even myself. "Not for your sake, but for mine. I won't carry the burden of hatred. But make no mistake, forgiveness doesn't mean there won't be consequences for what you've done." Her momentary confusion at my response gave the legal assistant time to position herself between us, calmly reminding Amanda that threatening statements would be reported to the court. Amanda retreated, but the exchange reinforced what we already knew. Justice needed to be served not just for me, but to protect others from similar schemes in the future. Returning to my home permanently brought mixed emotions. The victory felt hollow in some ways, tainted by the broken relationship with my son and the violation of my safe haven. The first night back, I walked through each room, taking inventory of changes and damage. Some alterations could be reversed easily, like furniture arrangement and wall decorations. Others, like Maria's destroyed garden, would take time and patience to restore. The process of securing my home began with changing all locks and installing a proper security system with cameras covering every entrance. The locksmith, a different company than the one Amanda had used, was sympathetic when I explained the situation. "Seen this before with older folks," he said grimly while installing extra secure deadbolts. "Family thinking they can just take over. Good for you for fighting back." Despite winning the legal battle, the emotional weight of betrayal remained heavy. I found myself jumping at unexpected sounds and double-checking locks before bed. Dreams of being locked out of my home while Maria called for me from inside would wake me in a cold sweat. The counselor Elaine had recommended, explained, these were normal responses to trauma that would ease with time and processing. Thomas moved into a small apartment across town after filing for divorce from Amanda. Our first meeting after the court case was painfully awkward. arranged at a neutral restaurant where we sat mostly in silence before he finally spoke. "I keep trying to understand how I let this happen," he said, staring into his coffee. "How I became someone who would help lock my own father out of his home." His genuine remorse was evident in his slumped shoulders and reddened eyes. "Amanda is a professional manipulator," I replied after careful consideration. "You're not the first person she's deceived, and unfortunately, probably not the last. The question is what you learn from this." Thomas struggled visibly to comprehend how thoroughly he had been influenced. "She started so small," he explained. "Little comments about your memory, suggestions that you seemed confused sometimes. Then managing our finances because she claimed to be better with money. Before I knew it, I was dependent on her approval for everything and believing whatever she told me about you. Rebuilding trust between us began with small steps. Thomas would come over for short visits, helping with household tasks without being asked. He approached each interaction with humility, never expecting forgiveness but working consistently to earn back any measure of trust I might extend. The community of neighbors who had witnessed Amanda's behavior rallied around me in unexpected ways. Barbara organized a garden restoration project, bringing over heritage rose bushes similar to those Maria had planted. Sam, from across the street, helped repair the broken lattice work on the back deck that had been damaged during Amanda's hasty redecorating efforts. At Jack's suggestion, I joined a support group for victims of elder exploitation. Sharing my story with others who had experienced similar betrayals helped me process the complex emotions. "The hardest part is accepting that someone you loved would try to harm you," said one woman whose nephew had drained her savings. Hearing others articulate the feelings I struggled to name made me feel less alone in my experience. Thomas found his own healing path through therapy, working to understand the manipulation patterns that had led him astray. The therapist explained about isolation tactics and gaslighting. He told me during a weekend visit where he was helping repaint the living room, Amanda used every technique in the book, especially playing on my insecurities about losing Mom and fears of your disapproval. As my son worked to repair the physical damage to the house, I sensed him trying to rebuild himself as well. The Thomas, who emerged slowly from this experience, was more thoughtful, less easily influenced, and painfully aware of his own vulnerabilities. With Elaine's guidance, I made proper legal arrangements to prevent any future attempts at exploitation. A detailed will with specific provisions about the house, comprehensive healthcare directives, and a carefully selected power of attorney who had no potential conflicts of interest. The experience taught me painful wisdom about protecting yourself even from family. As I explained to my support group, love shouldn't make us blind to warning signs. The people closest to us can sometimes cause the deepest harm precisely because we trust them without question. Finding a path to forgiveness proved challenging but necessary for my own healing. This didn't mean forgetting what happened or enabling similar behavior in the future. Rather, it meant releasing the consuming anger that threatened to become bitterness. Forgiveness doesn't excuse their behavior, our support group facilitator explained. It prevents their behavior from destroying your heart. Thomas's growth through this adversity impressed me more with each passing month. He found a new job with a smaller marketing firm, lived within his means in a modest apartment, and began rebuilding his independence. The painful experience had stripped away his naive trust, but replaced it with more discerning judgment. I found unexpected purpose in sharing my story with senior centers and community groups, warning others about the signs of financial exploitation and manipulation tactics. Document everything, I would advise. Trust your instincts when something feels wrong, even if it's family making you uncomfortable. Creating new, positive memories in the house became an important part of reclaiming it fully. I hosted a poker night for old friends, planted a new garden with Barbara's help, and eventually converted the basement back into my workshop. Each positive experience helped dilute the negative associations that had threatened to taint my home. The balance between caution and openness remains something I work on daily. The experience left me more careful about who I trust with personal information and access to my home, but I refuse to let it make me bitter or isolated. On the 1-year anniversary of the lockout, Thomas joined me for a quiet dinner at the house. We didn't discuss Amanda, who had moved out of state after the divorce, or the painful events directly. Instead, we talked about Maria, sharing memories that had been overshadowed by recent trauma. "Mom would be proud of how you handled this," Thomas said as we finished dessert. "She always said you were the strongest person she knew, not just physically but here." He tapped his chest over his heart. Looking at my son across the table in the home I had built for our family, I recognized both the pain we had endured and the resilience we had discovered. "The strongest houses aren't the ones that never face storms," I told him. "They're the ones that have been tested, repaired, and reinforced." If there's one lesson I want to share with all of you watching this video, it's that protecting yourself isn't selfish or untrusting. Document important agreements, secure your property legally, and trust your instincts when something feels wrong. Have any of you experienced something similar with family members trying to take advantage? Share your stories in the comments below. And if this story helped you recognize warning signs or take steps to protect yourself, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. I hope my experience helped someone else avoid the pain my son and I went through. Thank you for listening. And remember, it's never too late to rebuild what's been broken, whether it's a house or a relationship.